Ancient Egypt, one of the most captivating civilizations in history. But what was life like for someone actually living in this extraordinary world? It's easy to picture ancient Egypt through images of pyramids, King Tutankhamun, and mummies, but to truly understand the mindset of its people, you have to experience their daily lives. An Egyptologist who has dedicated over 4 decades to exploring this ancient culture seeks to go beyond the grand temples and royal tombs. Instead of focusing on kings and monuments, the goal is to uncover the lives of regular people, the everyday citizens. Being among their remains brings a sense of intimacy, warmth, and humanity. The journey involves uncovering clues about how these people lived. It's a rare look into ancient Egyptian home life and what they believed awaited them after death. Death, in their view, wasn't frightening. It was a gentle transition symbolized by a welcoming goddess rather than a grim reaper. A special focus is placed on a particular couple who once lived in a desert village. Their lives and burial treasures are examined to better understand the world they came from. Receiving recognition from royalty was a source of immense pride for them. Through their story, we get a clearer picture of what life in ancient Egypt was truly like. Welcome to Deir el-Medina, known to its ancient inhabitants as Par Demi, simply meaning the village. Though it may seem isolated and harsh today, 3,500 years ago, this was a vital community at the heart of ancient Egypt. Located on the west bank of Luxor, it was a suburb of Thebes, one of the great cities of the ancient world. This was the land of pharaohs and gods, but here lived everyday people, men, women, extended families, and children, all packed into a close-knit neighborhood. By recreating the sights, sounds, and scents of the time, we can vividly imagine life in this desert village thousands of years ago. To piece together the lives of these individuals, there is a valuable source of evidence: the earthly remains of a married couple who once lived in the village. Now located nearly 2,000 miles away at the Egyptian Museum in Turin. Ka and Merit, the architect, and his wife. Ka held the title of chief foreman, meaning he led the labor force, while Merit was titled Lady of the House, essentially a housewife. Ka's statue, likely idealized, portrays him as a confident and attractive man. A rare death mask of Merit shows a delicate and beautiful face. Though their mummies have not been unwrapped, X-rays and CT scans reveal details about them. Ka, about 5'6", had distinct features and a preference for bold black eyeliner. Merit, a petite woman about 5'2", was equally elegant. A long, dark brown, wavy, crimped wig would have made her look incredibly beautiful. But what truly brings Ka and Merit back to life is the collection of items found in their undisturbed tomb in 1906, where everything had remained untouched for over 3,000 years. One prominent Egyptologist of the time described it as perhaps the greatest discovery ever made, completely intact and filled with antiquities. The passageway and burial chamber were packed with furniture, boxes, and vases. This discovery was extraordinary not only because the tomb was untouched, but also due to the sheer abundance of objects found inside. There were tables, chairs, stools, and more furniture, with storage chests full of linen, cosmetic containers, a leather pouch holding shaving tools, a hip flask, everything, even loaves of specially shaped bread wrapped in palm fronds to keep them fresh. The volume and quality of material offer enough for generations of research. The collection not only reveals details about their burial, but also provides insight into the daily lives of Ka and Merit. The items range from death masks and coffins to personal belongings like Merit's beauty box, essentially the contents of her dressing table, including perfumes, cosmetics, moisturizers, and other beauty products considered vital by the ancient Egyptians. This beautifully crafted cosmetic chest shows that Merit was a wealthy woman who valued her appearance. Her glass container of black kohl eyeliner, made from rare glass in a typical Egyptian blue and gold color scheme, still holds the original eyeliner and its wooden applicator. Even today, eyeliner is applied in the same way in parts of Egypt. A stone alabaster perfume container still has traces of its original contents visible on its surface. It's remarkable to think that connecting with ancient Egyptians involves more than just visual evidence. It includes sensory experiences like smell. Scents such as cinnamon, lotus, and cedar let us experience their world in a deeper way. This was clearly an expensive item. So how could someone like Merit, not of royal blood, afford such luxury? The answer lies in their village and the unique profession of its residents. They were tomb and temple builders, highly skilled craftsmen, from foremen and stonemasons to draftsmen and carpenters who lived here with their families. Their workplace was about a mile to the northwest, the most famous cemetery in the world, now known as the Valley of the Kings. For nearly 5 centuries, men like Ka constructed the tombs of Egypt's most well-known pharaohs, including Hatshepsut, Amenhotep III, and Tutankhamun. They formed an elite group, a specialized team of workers and architects representing the finest of Egyptian culture. These craftsmen were responsible for bringing the pharaoh's eternal visions to life. The tomb indicates that he and Merit shared a close, faithful relationship. The scenes on this ornate box depict them sitting side by side, receiving offerings meant to support them in the afterlife. Clues from their lives also suggest deep affection between them. Although ancient Egyptians didn't have marriage ceremonies in the modern sense and simply began living together, they still exchanged tokens of love, often in the form of rings. One such ring was discovered beneath Merit's death mask. It hasn't yet been displayed publicly in Turin. It appears to have been placed there hastily, perhaps at the last moment before burial, and remained hidden within her wrappings for thousands of years. It was a spontaneous, heartfelt gesture. The image on the ring appears to be the cow form of Hathor, which is correct. Hathor, often shown as a cow, was regarded as a nurturing goddess, protector in childbirth, and guide into the afterlife. The ring symbolizes the love between Ka and Merit, and in many ways, it's perhaps the most significant artifact found in the tomb. Ka and Merit lived during a flourishing period in Egyptian history, sustained by the yearly flooding of the Nile. By 1400 BC, the Egyptian civilization was nearly 2,000 years old and at its peak under the rule of the 18th dynasty. This era included some of Egypt's most well-known rulers, Tutankhamun, the female pharaoh Hatshepsut, and the controversial Akhenaten. At the center of this period stood Akhenaten's father, Amenhotep III, who saw himself as a living sun god and embodied the power of the sun deity. Amenhotep III, known for his grandeur, ruled during a time of great prosperity and influence, and Ka worked under him. Ka's role was to help secure the pharaoh's eternal legacy by designing and constructing remarkable monuments, including tombs and temples. One of his projects was the Solar Court in the Luxor Temple, a groundbreaking design that moved away from dark, enclosed sanctuaries and embraced the open worship of the sun. In exchange for their service, Ka and Merit received support from the state, housing, food, water, a tomb, and even servants. They were part of a well-structured middle-class society. Women had legal rights, large families were common, and literacy and education levels were higher in their village than elsewhere in Egypt. During their time, the village contained about 20 homes. While the exact location of their residence isn't certain, it was likely one of the larger homes at the northern end, possibly even the one being visited. The front room of such a house would have been a social space, especially for the women of the household, where they would gather to talk and spend time together, often with children playing nearby. Up the stairs and around the corner is perhaps the most important room in the house. I really love this feature. It's built-in furniture, similar to a divan or a chaise longue. This is where the man of the house would sit in the evening, drinking beer and talking. Then a few steps up leads to a fairly spacious area, which was likely used for storage and also served as a bedroom where beds or sleeping mats were placed. As we move further into the highest part of the house, we reach another storage area, possibly for clothing, but almost certainly for food and drink as well, since it connects directly to the built-in kitchen. This kitchen is remarkable, featuring a built-in oven at the back of the house. Similar ovens are even depicted in ancient sketches, showing women blowing into them to keep the fire hot for baking bread. Next to the oven is an ancient version of a refrigerator. Pottery vessels containing drinks would be placed in a pit dug into the ground, covered with a small temporary roof to keep them as cool as possible, ideal for a hot day. The rooms on either side aren't part of this house. They belong to neighboring homes. These houses were built in a terraced row, much like back-to-back housing seen during the Industrial Revolution in Britain. Privacy wasn't a known concept in this part of ancient Egypt. Neighbors were always nearby. Life in the village was almost entirely state-supported. Donkeys would make daily trips, bringing water from the Nile Valley to be poured into a central distribution system. Each household received about 100 liters of water per day for drinking, cooking, and bathing. Less than half a mile from the village is another essential part of this organized system: grain storage buildings. Though constructed slightly later, these granaries functioned like a bank. Money didn't exist in Egypt at the time, so salaries were paid in wheat and barley. These granaries could hold vast amounts of food, over 40,000 sacks of grain in total. Chief workers received 7.5 sacks of grain each month, 5.5 of emmer wheat and 2 of barley, enough for their families and servants to make staples like bread and beer. Villagers also received fish and vegetables, and they could trade extra grain for luxuries like meat and wine. These storage areas would have been bustling with activity: scribes recording deliveries, workers hauling sacks, and others collecting their rations. It was a simple yet enduring system that supported Egypt's prosperity and political stability for thousands of years. Its importance was such that it was frequently depicted on tomb walls. Do you like this personality? A scribe lived at the same time as Ka, and this scene shows the entire process of harvesting and distributing wheat and barley. The main product was bread, and Merit had up to 50 loaves stored. Bread was a staple in the ancient Egyptian diet. They enhanced it with various ingredients: dates or honey for sweetness, and spices like cumin or coriander for savory flavors. In the tomb, there's a wide variety of bread shapes and sizes, including ones that look like gingerbread men, and others shaped like fruit, flowers, and animals. Although they didn't use yeast in the modern sense, the method of mixing flour, water, and salt to make bread has remained largely unchanged for 3,500 years. This mud brick oven is a typical example from ancient Egyptian settlements. It's easy to picture Merit baking bread for her family in such a setting, an image that feels timeless. The smell, the texture, the method, it all provides a tangible connection to their daily life. Bread was eaten daily by all Egyptians. It was also used in religious offerings. Even when bread became moldy, it was used medicinally. Ancient medical texts advised applying moldy bread to wounds, and while they didn't understand the science, it was effective because of the natural penicillin in mold. Though credited to modern discovery, the Egyptians recognized its healing properties thousands of years ago. While Merit mainly managed the household, Ka served the pharaoh. He and other tomb builders walked a route from their village to the Valley of the Kings. The path started at the village's southern end, climbed over the ridge, and continued across the mountain. Ka and his team, likely numbering between 40 and 60 men, would have made this trek regularly, possibly singing, carrying water jars and their meals. Ka probably walked it hundreds of times, beginning as a carpenter and later becoming the royal architect and overseer. Working under the intense sun, they would travel this demanding route and then begin their labor. The path led westward into the realm of the dead. From the top, it's clear why this area was chosen. It aligns with ancient Egyptian spiritual beliefs. To them, the sun was divine. Sunrise in the east represented the god's birth, making it the land of the living. Sunset in the west signified the god's death, making that the land of the dead. You chose this location to create tombs for the dead, one specific place where life and death meet, in the Nile Valley, in the Valley of the Kings. It's a striking contrast. As we continue our walk, we arrive at the western branch of the Valley of the Kings, a place where time seems to have stopped. The area is scattered with remains from the time of the tomb builders. There's a grand staircase impressively constructed, and higher up, everything is remarkably well preserved. This marks the beginning of the domain overseen by a man named Ka. Here is a guard hut where a single guard would have been stationed around the clock. Even ancient pottery has survived at this site, including a 3,500-year-old beer jar. We can date it to the 18th dynasty, as this western part of the valley was used only for royal tombs. The guards stationed here kept watch over the valley, mainly to prevent tomb robbery. They also protected the valuable materials used in constructing new tombs, metals like copper, chisels, paints, plaster, and lamp oils, all of which were expensive. Though quiet now, 3,500 years ago, this place would have echoed with the sounds of construction, mallets striking chisels, workers mixing plaster and paint, overseers giving directions. Building a tomb for a king was dangerous. There were obvious physical risks like injuries from tools, falling from scaffolding, or accidents in the tomb itself. But since the valley is a dry riverbed, flash floods posed an additional threat, requiring workers to flee when water rushed through the area. During his life, Ka worked on 3 royal tombs, starting as a craftsman. The copper chisels found in his tomb were the tools he used. He eventually became a royal architect, overseeing the design and construction of at least 2 pharaohs' tombs. This responsibility was critical. Each pharaoh had to reach the afterlife to secure both their own immortality and the stability of Egypt. A successful tomb meant continued prosperity. Failure could bring national collapse. One such project was Tomb K25, believed to have been begun for the son of Amenhotep III. Work was halted when the royal capital moved away from Thebes. It looks as though the workers stopped only yesterday. The wall is unfinished, smoothed by chisels, but not yet plastered, and you can still see the marks where they measured and carved the surface. For an architect like Ka, every detail of the tomb's design was carefully planned. Is this conversation helpful so far? The ancient Egyptian unit of measurement known as the cubit measured about 52.5 centimeters in today's terms. It was divided into 7 palms, which correspond to the width of a human hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and at the end, 4 fingers were added. This system was used for measuring and marking during construction, as seen from the dots used to mark measurements. It aligned precisely with their work, making it not only practical, but also elegant. After a day's work, the cubit could be folded up and stored in a leather case. Imagine a team of 30 or 40 workers laboring in extreme heat and dusty conditions, using only simple oil lamps for light. Being in such darkness with only a small lamp highlights the remarkable achievements of these workers, who managed to create extraordinary monuments using basic tools. There is evidence that one of these workers, a man named for his efforts, was greatly honored during his lifetime. He received a golden royal cubit as a token of recognition from the pharaoh Amenhotep II. This item was similar in significance to a modern commemorative gift for service. One can imagine the pride he must have felt receiving this mark of royal appreciation. Had mantelpieces existed, it surely would have been displayed there. What makes this cubit truly special is its high level of personalization, capturing the essence of its owner in one object. It combines the tools of his profession with decorative detail. The inscriptions include information about his career, including that he built a small shrine or temple not only in Thebes, but also further north at Hermopolis, indicating he worked beyond his home city. Holding such an object, possibly once held by him and his wife, brings a sense of wonder and pride in their status under the pharaoh's favor. As his career progressed, he and his wife began a family. In ancient Egypt, childbirth posed serious risks, and women would seek the protection of Hathor, the goddess of motherhood. All women aspired to be like Hathor, who was revered and admired much like a modern celebrity. She embodied beauty and maternal care and was worshipped at the funerary temple of a prominent female ruler at Deir el-Bahari, just a couple of miles from the village. The temple stands at the base of cliffs believed to be the home of Hathor herself. The columns of the temple are topped with images of the goddess, depicted with a woman's face and cow's ears, symbolizing her gentle and nurturing nature. She was viewed as an eternal mother figure, caring for the souls of those who worshipped her and guiding them through the afterlife. Be renewed each morning with the rising sun. Ordinary people like Merit were not allowed to enter the inner parts of temples, which were sacred spaces meant only for the clergy and pharaohs. Instead, she would have practiced worship at home. This replica of a bowl found in a village shows the double heads of the goddess Hathor. It likely served as a powerful charm, much like an amulet, bringing Hathor's beauty and blessings into daily life. Whether it held food, beer, wine, or flowers, the contents were thought to be touched by Hathor's magic. Hathor was not only the goddess of fertility and motherhood, but also associated with intimacy. Evidence shows that sexual enjoyment was valued then as it is today. This replica from the Turin erotic papyrus depicts couples actively showing affection. The men appear rugged, some balding with stubble and round bellies, but all with exaggerated features. The women are depicted as beautiful and flexible, with detailed hairstyles decorated with lotus blossoms. These images reflect a desire to explore romanticism. They do not objectify women, rather the women are active participants in pleasure, treating sex as both recreation and affection. Though Hathor inspired desire, her protection was most needed during pregnancy and childbirth. Women like Merit would have sought her aid. The outer areas of the temple at Deir el-Bahari were central to this kind of devotion. A worn image shows a rare depiction of a pregnant woman here, the mother of the female pharaoh Hatshepsut. The fetus is shown within her mother's gently swollen belly. During excavations a century ago, archaeologists uncovered items like baby clothes bearing Hathor's image, likely offerings left in hope of conceiving a child. Merit had 3 known children, 2 sons and 1 daughter, whose images are found in her tomb chapel and on decorated boxes. With child mortality rates around 50%, she would have needed all the divine support possible. But the community also relied on practical remedies. The Kahun Papyrus records treatments and spells for women's health. One entry describes how to treat pain in the lower body, diagnose it as womb discharge, and prepare a remedy using carob fruit, incense pellets, and cow's milk, boiled, cooled, mixed, and consumed over 4 mornings. These efforts reflect attempts to understand and manage complex medical conditions. The root cause of many health issues affecting women was once believed to be a wandering womb. Ancient Egyptians thought that the uterus was not fixed in place, but could move throughout the body. To treat this strange condition, women would stand over burning incense, hoping the pleasant fumes would guide the womb back to its proper position. Although this might seem odd now, such a diagnosis and treatment could have provided comfort, especially during childbirth. Hearing a medical professional recite prescriptions might have had a calming, placebo-like effect. Combined with amulets and magical spells provided by a local midwife, these texts added a sense of structure during a challenging time in a woman's life. In addition to raising children, a woman was responsible for her household and likely took pride in maintaining it. Unlike today's neutral tones, ancient Egypt was filled with vivid color. Traces of these colors are still visible in places protected from sunlight, especially on ceilings. The brightness and vibrancy of the paints are striking, almost leaping out at the viewer. One such colorful temple was built by Pharaoh Ramses III. The Egyptians favored bold primary colors, reds, greens, blues, which were especially vivid. The blues and greens were costly to produce, requiring synthetic pigments, making them a symbol of wealth and status for the king who ordered the work. Creating these synthetic colors was too expensive for most people. Instead, they used materials found in nature, like rocks from the desert that contained red and yellow iron oxides. By breaking the rock apart, they could crush the colored sections, mix them with water, and apply them as paint. A bit of moisture, even saliva, could revive the colors and show their brilliance against a white background. These hues symbolize life, energy, blood, and the sun. To understand how villagers like those in the community used color in their homes, one can look at surviving evidence. At the southern end of a village, a rare clue still remains. You're giving feedback on a new version of ChatGPT. Which response do you prefer? Responses may take a moment to load. ChatGPT Response 1: I'm about to witness something I've long anticipated, an authentic wall painting from an ancient Egyptian residence. This artwork portrays the lower portion of a female Ian playing a flute. She adorns gold bracelets and anklets, and notably bears 2 tattoos of the household deity Bes on her thighs. The vivid colors and heart-shaped leaves cascading along the sides offer a rare insight into ancient Egyptian interior decoration, infusing a touch of greenery into the desert surroundings. Jolth.journals Ikibi Klis 1 Wikipedia Plus. Wins 1. This scene prompts contemplation about its creation. Did the artisans responsible for royal tombs also embellish private homes, or perhaps the women themselves painted these images? While the answer remains elusive, it's conceivable that the lady of the house influenced the choice of scenes to surround her during daily activities with her children and relatives. Such remnants from the past bring us closer to understanding individuals like Merit, who appears to have been a devoted wife and diligent mother, embodying elegance and refinement. Tragically, evidence suggests she passed away suddenly, leaving her husband in mourning. He even interred her in a coffin originally intended for himself, as indicated by its size and inscriptions bearing only his name. Nevertheless, Merit was commemorated in the tomb chapel she shared with her husband, situated near their village. This space, where their family would have offered tributes and paid respects, exudes a sense of familial warmth and affection. Interestingly, their daughter, also named Merit, is depicted multiple times alongside her parents in the chapel. In one scene, she appears to be placing a necklace around her father's neck, or perhaps anointing him with perfume, suggesting she may have cared for him in his later years. As for the architect's later life, the presence of elegant walking sticks implies he lived to an old age, continuing to oversee significant projects. Returning to the remote area of the Valley of the Kings, we find the final resting place of Amenhotep III, one of the royal tombs he worked on. The tomb, currently under restoration, has been closed to the public for decades, making this visit a rare opportunity to follow in his footsteps. I prefer this response, ChatGPT Response 2. I'm about to see something I've long awaited, an original wall scene from an ancient Egyptian home. Here it is. The colors are vivid and fresh, offering a rare look into the interior design of ancient Egypt. The artwork shows the lower half of a female Ian playing a flute, adorned with gold bracelets and anklets. What stands out most are 2 tattoos of the household god Bes, adding warmth and character. The scene is rich with color, featuring heart-shaped leaves hanging down the sides, bringing a touch of greenery to the otherwise desert surroundings. It's fascinating to imagine that in this very village, where the artists who decorated royal tombs lived, perhaps a local woman asked them to paint her home. Or maybe the women painted these scenes themselves. We'll never know for sure, but it's nice to think the woman of the house had a say in the kind of imagery she wanted as she went about her daily life with her children, friends, and family. These ancient fragments help bring us closer to the real people of the past. In Merit's case, she appears to have been a loving wife and devoted mother, a graceful and stylish woman. Sadly, this is where her story ends. Evidence suggests she died suddenly, leaving her husband grieving. She was buried in a coffin that had been prepared for him. It was far too large and bore only his name. Yet she was honored in the tomb chapel they shared, located just outside their village. This is where her husband and children would come to make offerings and remember her. It offers a rare window into their daily life. The whole chapel is filled with a sense of family, warmth, and love. What's notable is that while the couple appears multiple times in the artwork, one child is shown consistently, their daughter, also named Merit. In one scene, the mother stands in front with the daughter behind. On another wall, the daughter leans toward her father, possibly placing a necklace around his neck or applying perfume. One likes to imagine she cared for him in his later years. As for the architect himself, signs suggest he lived into old age, possibly still overseeing major projects. Now I've returned to a remote part of the Valley of the Kings to see the final resting place of Amenhotep III. It was the third royal tomb the architect worked on, and it's thrilling to walk where he once did. The tomb, closed for decades and currently under restoration, is rarely seen. It's an incredibly moving experience, absolutely beautiful. I prefer this response. This is incredibly moving, the colors are vibrant, and the artwork is breathtaking. It depicts Amenhotep III being welcomed by the gods of the underworld. A new deity is shown offering him the Ankh, the symbol of life. The artisans behind this scene translated the king's vision into reality with extraordinary care. It's mesmerizing. The detail is astonishing. The artist didn't simply apply color, someone carefully added individual curls of hair. Look closely and you can see the texture. Amenhotep is shown alongside Osiris, the green-faced god of renewal and resurrection. This tomb represents more than a burial site, it's like a time machine, the final resting place of Amenhotep III. It's clear no cost was spared, and rightly so, as this was to be the eternal home of a deified ruler. As we descend further, it truly feels like entering the underworld, deeper into darkness and eternity. The tomb's intricate design of chambers and staircases was meant to protect the king's body and the treasures once placed around it. Notice this brilliant architectural strategy. Originally, these walls were covered in mud brick, possibly plastered and painted over. Images of the king and the gods line the walls but were concealed, so tomb robbers might think they'd reached the end and turn back, yet beyond lay the true heart of the tomb. This is the burial chamber, the central and most sacred part, where one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs was laid to rest, a man regarded as divine in both life and death. How do you bury a god surrounded by gold, gemstones, and exquisite funerary items, all thoughtfully arranged by his devoted craftsmen? The royal mummy was believed to contain not just the soul of the king, but the essence of Egypt itself, a culmination of every ruler before him. After decades of anticipation, seeing this in person, even briefly, is deeply rewarding. While we can now marvel at the craftsmanship, the master artisan who designed it likely never saw the completed tomb, as he died before his king. Yet just like his ruler, his body was prepared for the afterlife. This journey brings us closer to those who created these wonders. Their hopes and struggles echo our own: dedication, family, and love. And this is only the beginning of their story, leading into a realm of ritual, magic, and unwavering belief. That life could truly continue forever is a belief that shaped ancient traditions. Here we see a name inscribed prominently, and in speaking the names of the deceased, they are brought back to life once more. Join the next journey deep into the Egyptian afterlife, a remarkable exploration revealing the costly and intricate preparations one couple made for death, carried out through elaborate rituals aimed at securing a place in eternity. In the early 20th century, a remarkable discovery transformed our understanding of life and death in ancient Egypt. In February 1906, a team of archaeologists uncovered a tomb untouched for over 3 millennia. Rather than royal treasures, they found a glimpse into the daily lives of ordinary Egyptians, specifically a working man and his wife, whose mummies and belongings remained undisturbed. An expert in Egyptian history delves into the world of this couple to uncover details of their lives and deaths. Previously, we explored their modest desert village, examined the tools of their trades, the food they ate, how it was prepared, and how they spent their leisure time. In many respects, their everyday lives resembled our own. However, their view of death was vastly different. To them, life served as a rehearsal for the ideal afterlife they sought. Their quest for eternal life involved vast expenditures on burial items, tombs, and religious ceremonies. The man's Book of the Dead, for example, would have been a costly artifact, created to guide him through numerous spiritual challenges. Failure to pass these tests meant being consumed by a formidable creature, an end with no return. Using this couple as a lens, we can explore ancient Egypt's beliefs about death. For them, death marked the most critical point in life. If properly prepared, one could enter a perfected version of existence, modeled after their own world. Whether commoner or king, preparing for the afterlife was the greatest investment one could make. In ancient Thebes, this belief fueled a major industry. Here, death was central to the economy, employing everyone from tomb builders and embalmers to craftsmen, writers of sacred texts, and even flower arrangers who adorned tombs with offerings. The couple lived in the midst of this thriving funerary economy, in a desert settlement that once stood at the heart of this unique and powerful cultural tradition. Deir el-Medina is located near the impressive Valley of the Kings, where tombs were constructed for powerful pharaohs. While Ka spent his days working on these royal tombs, he dedicated much of his free time to preparing for his own death. To ensure he was ready for the journey into the afterlife, Ka carefully planned his path, beginning with a guidebook. This guide, known as the Book of the Dead, was discovered in his tomb and is represented here by a replica. The Book of the Dead is a compilation of spells, texts, and incantations meant to help the deceased navigate the afterlife. Though the language may seem mysterious, its purpose was clear. For example, one spell calls on the opener of paths to allow the soul to enter the realm of Osiris with fear, but leave in peace. Facing demons or monsters in the underworld required powerful spells to neutralize their threats and safely reach eternal life. While many copies of the Book of the Dead were mass-produced by local artisans, Ka's was a custom-made, deluxe version, complete with personal details and grand titles. One passage declares, "Words spoken by the great chief Ka, I know the northern gate of the sky, the place where Ra travels by wind. I control the rigging in the sun god's ship and row tirelessly in Ra's great vessel." Basic papyrus scrolls were inexpensive, about 1/5 of a worker's monthly wage, but one with funerary inscriptions like Ka's could cost the equivalent of 6 months' salary or more. Nearly 14 meters of writing were carefully inscribed with prepared inks and thoughtfully applied colors. Ka's Book of the Dead remained intact and hidden in an undiscovered tomb for over 3,000 years. The only clue to its existence was a small chapel Ka had built at the edge of the village. Despite being another costly part of Ka's funeral preparations, this chapel served as an essential connection between the living and the dead. The space is vibrant and striking. Stepping out of the harsh desert sun and into the chapel feels like entering a calm sanctuary. Built close to their home, the chapel was easily accessible, as the dead in this culture were seen as simply having moved nearby. This allowed families to regularly visit and honor them. The chapel is richly decorated with golden backgrounds and a vaulted ceiling painted in cool blues and greens, evoking the Egyptian landscape and sky. These colors, especially the blues and greens, were among the most expensive to create, emphasizing the care and significance placed on the space. No expense was spared. Every wall illustrates the things that brought joy to Ka and merit in life, and what they hoped to continue enjoying in the afterlife. Entering the space feels like stepping into their personal living room. Everything they loved surrounds you. This isn't a typical funerary structure, it's more like a life-preserving machine, a compact space filled with the essence of what life meant to them. This chapel was the first clue in a sequence that eventually led archaeologists to their tomb. After remaining hidden for over 3,000 years, the chapel was found by an Italian diplomat who had been appointed French consul to Egypt in 1803. His main goal was collecting ancient artifacts, and his approach was far from ethical. He employed various agents who effectively looted sites across Egypt, assembling an extraordinary collection of antiquities. This collection was later sold to wealthy buyers, including the King of Sardinia, who placed it in what is now the renowned Egyptian Museum in Turin. One of the most significant items in the collection came from the chapel, a richly painted funerary stela. This memorial stone was created to preserve the names of Ka and Merit for eternity, and its presence in Turin eventually helped locate their tomb. The stela depicts Ka twice, on both the left and right, worshipping two major deities associated with the afterlife, Osiris and Anubis, the jackal-headed god. Ka is shown praying for a long and prosperous afterlife. Beneath that, a lower panel resembles a family portrait, with Ka and Merit seated before a table, overflowing with offerings. On the right, their eldest son raises his hand in prayer toward them, symbolizing the next generation's wish for their eternal happiness. It's believed that Ka commissioned this stela while still alive, selecting the god's design and color scheme. This was common practice in ancient Egypt, allowing individuals to prepare their funerary monuments ahead of time to ensure everything was perfect. After death, the depicted images were believed to continue working their magic, serving as spiritual insurance for the afterlife. The stela, the chapel, and the Book of the Dead were just the beginning of Ka and Merit's preparations for eternity. Their largest investment was the tomb itself. In the Valley of the Kings, where Ka oversaw royal tomb construction, one can explore how he may have managed and funded his own. A geologist explains that tombs were initially carved by creating a ceiling slot, then widened, and finally excavated downward. A tomb of this scale would require around 40 years of labor by a single worker to complete. This was far beyond what most ordinary Egyptians could afford. Ka had both the expertise and the drive to construct such a tomb for himself. While this example is a royal tomb, the question remains: how did Ka manage to get help building his own tomb during others' free time? The answer lies in mutual assistance and bartering. You help build my tomb, I'll help with yours. As an architect, Ka may have designed tombs for others in exchange for their help on his, which likely gave him the advantage. These tomb builders were experts, which is why the tombs in Deir el-Medina rank among the finest in the world. With the support of his peers, Ka clearly put immense time, effort, and resources into his tomb, so security was a priority. Tomb robbery had been a serious issue for 2,000 years. That's likely why he chose to do something very different. Most Egyptians who could afford a tomb placed it right below their chapel, making it easy to locate and loot. Ka, having learned from royal practices, opted to conceal his tomb elsewhere. It remained undiscovered for over 3,000 years. In 1906, an Italian archaeologist began new excavations in the village. As director of the Egyptian Museum in Turin, he was well acquainted with Ka and Merit's commemorative stele, and knew their tomb had yet to be located. He could read hieroglyphs and understood that an important individual named Ka, married to Merit, must have been buried nearby where the stele was found. Determined to locate the tomb, he had to decide where to begin the search. The current director of the Egyptian Museum in Turin retraced his steps in Egypt, considering the likely thought process, standing in the area, looking around, and trying to deduce the tomb's location. Ka had been strategic. Knowing the tomb's contents, he wanted to keep it hidden. The archaeologist must have thought, the stele is already in the museum, it must be nearby. Studying the terrain, he likely decided to clear away the debris. It was just a hunch, but he had a large team. He moved 250 workers to the base of the rock near the chapel. After digging for 30 days, they reached an opening in the bedrock, found a bricked wall, dismantled it, and uncovered a sealed doorway. That must have been an extraordinary moment, finding a sealed door in an Egyptian tomb. It was especially remarkable since most tombs had already been looted. Very few were untouched, and even fewer were as well preserved and richly furnished as this one. In essence, what the archaeologist discovered was, this is likely the most important non-royal tomb from this entire era, possibly in all of ancient Egyptian history. It reveals so much about real life in ancient Egypt, beyond just the gods and pharaohs. Since Schiaparelli's time, very few people have entered this tomb, but Delaney and I were granted special access. This is it. This is the place. He was a clever and cunning man, which is probably why the tomb remained hidden for so long. It's in a very unexpected location, at the bottom of a deep shaft. Getting down is just as difficult now as it would have been in his time. Wow, look at this. I can't believe it. There's a marking saying it was discovered intact by an Italian archaeological team in 1906. They even wrote over the ancient red ochre marks which were made by the workers to guide construction, marking measurements and where to carve, trying to stay as accurate to the plan as possible. They would have used tools to get precise angles here. The tomb was sealed off twice. Just imagine the excitement Schiaparelli and his team must have felt. 2 intact blockages. When they removed the second wall, they found themselves in a large antechamber filled with objects, a beautifully made bed, painted pottery, and floral arrangements. But that was just the beginning. Approaching the burial chamber, this is likely where Schiaparelli knocked on the door and joked about needing a key. After seeing the bed, he must have known there was more to find. One of his team members, Arthur Weigel, a British inspector of antiquities, recorded his amazement, calling it probably the greatest and most unique discovery, full of fascinating details. At that time, the chamber was packed with artifacts, though now it's only home to a colony of bats. A photographer once stood right here, took a photo looking in, then turned around and captured everything behind. There were 2 massive coffins, still unopened, likely filled with jewelry, furniture, vases, and other treasures. Along one wall lies the coffin of Merritt. This place is swarming with small bats. That back wall held the much larger sarcophagus of Ka. In ancient Egypt, children didn't always inherit their parents' possessions, and nearly everything Ka and Merritt owned was sealed in this tomb for use in the afterlife. Few people have had the privilege of entering, and now it's easier to understand the significance of all the items originally buried here. Placed with such care, and now beautifully displayed in the museum in Turin, it's remarkable to see everything come together, and imagine how Schiaparelli must have felt entering this place in 1906. It's a rare and special experience. The vast number of items discovered in the tomb shows the significant investment made there. Hundreds of possessions, many crafted at great expense, were created solely for use in the afterlife. One detailed statue shows Ka with his hands on his stiff kilt, a gesture of humility before the gods. These statues represented an idealized image of how the deceased wanted to appear in the next life. They also served as a backup vessel for the soul if the mummified body were damaged. The kilt bears a funerary prayer, and a small garland of real flowers still rests around Ka's chest. Among the most valuable items found in the tomb is Merritt's exquisite death mask, crafted with great skill and expensive materials. The eyes, eyebrows, and decorative elements were made from colored glass, a material the Egyptians only began to produce during Ka's lifetime. While cheaper yellow ochre was often used to imitate gold, real gold was chosen for Merritt's mask, which is covered in gold leaf. The most expensive item, costing more than a year's wages, was the coffin used for Merritt. It is also covered in gold leaf and was likely intended for Ka, as only his name is inscribed on it. However, it was used for Merritt because she appears to have died first. But how did she die? Was it due to a prolonged illness or something sudden like an accident? Special permission was granted to examine the mummies of Ka and Merritt through CT scans, since unwrapping them is not allowed. The scans reveal what lies beneath the wrappings. Pathologist Peter Venesis and radiologist Curtis Sophia examined Merritt's scans to uncover details about her final moments. She was certainly not in her early 20s. She appears to have been in her 30s or possibly even 40s. Her well-preserved joints suggest a life of comfort and privilege. There's no sign of chronic illness or prolonged immobility, which would show in the bones. This suggests she either experienced a very brief illness or died suddenly and unexpectedly. Merritt's sudden death left little time for preparation, but the elaborate and time-consuming mummification process had to start right away. This was essential to preserve the body as a vessel for the soul in the afterlife. The process took about 70 days and began with the removal of internal organs to prevent decay. This included the brain, which was typically extracted through the nose. Merritt's scans reveal something very unexpected was discovered. This is a cross-sectional view looking down into Merritt's skull from the top of her head. The white structure clearly visible is her brain, which had shifted to the back of her skull and was not removed. Why is this significant? It indicates that there were alternative methods for preserving the brain. The next stage in the embalming process involved drying the body, typically taking around 40 days. This was usually done by covering the body with dry salt to extract all bodily fluids. However, analysis of Merritt's mummy revealed a different method. Instead of using dry salt, Merritt was immersed in a highly concentrated salt solution, effectively pickling her body. This process allowed her organs to remain inside without decaying. The angle at which the brain has settled suggests the body was placed at a slight tilt during the draining process. This helped ensure all fluids that could cause decomposition were completely removed. Although this was likely the most advanced preservation method of the time, it was also very expensive. After her body was dried, Merritt was wrapped in layers of fine linen and a red outer shroud. The costliness didn't end there. Chemical analysis of her wrappings revealed traces of oil derived from the tilapia fish. This oil had no preservative function. It was used for symbolic reasons. The tilapia was seen as special because it carries its young in its mouth when threatened and releases them once the danger is gone. To the ancient Egyptians, this appeared miraculous and symbolized rebirth, linking the fish to the goddess Hathor and the concept of fertility and renewal. The tilapia oil, combined with rare imported ingredients, would have been very expensive, but it was believed to help ensure Merritt's smooth passage to the afterlife. The preparations went beyond preservation. Just as people today dress to impress for exclusive events, ancient Egyptians believed looking their best was essential for entering the afterlife. Scans show that Merritt was adorned beneath her wrappings, still wearing a stunning collection of jewelry. What would now be considered a valuable inheritance was buried with her. The most remarkable item is a large, broad collar necklace. At the Petrie Museum in London, which holds one of the most extensive collections of Egyptian jewelry, a similar necklace can be seen. It consists of many small, colourful amulets arranged in a vibrant, jewel-like pattern. This is the same type of broad collar Merritt still wears on her mummy, as seen in her scan. The top 5 rows of the necklace were composed of elongated green elements. The beads are actually shaped like cos lettuces. Lettuce was sacred to the fertility god Min, and wearing it in a necklace like this connected the wearer to the god of fertility and new life. Below that are 2 more rows that resemble small hand grenades, but they are actually bunches of grapes. These shiny blue grapes were not only beautiful but also produced wine, which was sacred to Hathor, the goddess of love, sexuality, and rebirth, who also welcomed the dead. Merritt was adorned with this type of collar to not only look beautiful but also to be associated with these 2 deities closely tied to life, rebirth, and eternity. In addition to the collar, Merritt wore 2 large gold earrings and a belt made of gold cowrie shells similar to this one. She was presented in an elegant way, as seen in tomb paintings where dancers and Aeons associated with Hathor appear nearly naked, wearing large collars, gold earrings, styled hair, and gold belts with cowrie shells and colourful decorations. The look was meant to be alluring, romantic, and to emphasize their ability to bear children. This is comparable to dressing a modern woman in a fine clothing, emphasizing her vitality and sexuality, showing that she was as full of life in the afterlife as she had been in the world of the living. Merritt wanted to remain youthful and attractive forever, not as an old, wise figure, and every effort was made to present her in the best way possible. Her most personal items were prepared for her journey as well. One of her prized possessions was a magnificent wig, kept in its own tall box, inscribed with funerary prayers. The lid read, "A funerary offering of Osiris, the great god, lord of eternity, that he may offer beef, birds, and all good things to the soul of merit." Other items were also prepared for the afterlife. Her bed, used in life, was repainted and inscribed for its new purpose. Great care and no expense was spared in preparing her for eternity. Although she was buried, she likely remained very much present in the thoughts of her husband, who probably continued to speak to her. The Egyptians were known to write to their deceased loved ones about both everyday and serious matters. One example is a pottery bowl, a common household item, inscribed with a message in black ink by a woman to her late husband. These letters to the dead were written on papyrus, limestone fragments, or pottery. In the letter, the woman says, "O husband, you should be here helping me settle this dispute. He is causing me pain, but I know I will triumph over anyone, dead or alive, who acts against me." Our daughter is the type who constantly checks in, asking, "Where are you? What are you doing?" Even jokingly suggesting that being dead isn't a good enough excuse not to respond. It reflects a strong belief that the deceased can still assist the living, having merely passed into another realm. This woman is continuing the same conversations she would have had while her husband was alive, continuing to talk to him as she always did. But the ancient Egyptians didn't only connect with the dead through writing, they also did so through games. Laughter. We're now playing the ancient Egyptian game of Senet, a board game that was incredibly popular, dating back to at least 3000 BC. It was enjoyed by both royalty and everyday people, much like watching a TV drama today, a way to relax and have fun. Senet was essentially a race game based on chance. In the Book of the Dead, it serves as a metaphor for the journey to the afterlife. We're giving it a try now, and it's quite entertaining, though we likely don't grasp all the depth and meaning it held. For the ancient Egyptians, Senet represented more than entertainment. It symbolized the great uncertainty of the afterlife. To win at Senet was to succeed in life and in passing to the next world. That's why people played it not only at home, but also near tombs. By moving piece by piece through the game, they believed they were helping their departed loved ones navigate the dangers of the underworld. It mirrored the uncertainty of death. Would you emerge victorious, or would death win in the end? One of these Senet boards was found in a tomb, and it's likely it was played near the chapel to ease a loved one's journey through the afterlife. Given the apparent age difference between the couple, it's likely not long after one passed, the other followed. Scans of his body suggest he was older, probably in his 50s or beyond, maybe even into his 60s or 70s. His skeleton is remarkably healthy for someone of that age, showing no signs of fractures, chronic disease, or skeletal degeneration. Like his wife, he likely lived a fairly healthy life until near the end. He too seems to have died suddenly and undergone the elaborate and costly mummification process. His brain remains inside the skull, just like hers. He also wore large hoop earrings and ornate jewelry around his neck. Scans revealed another detail. A cobra's head placed on his forehead, beautifully crafted from carnelian, a deep orange stone, complete with the snake's fierce eyes and textured ridges. This amulet was intended to refresh the throat in the afterlife. Is this conversation helpful so far? The swelling of a snake's throat suggests it should have been placed on the throat rather than the forehead. In ancient Egypt, only the king and queen were permitted to wear the cobra on their foreheads. This may have been the embalmer's way of honoring him, elevating him in death. He was their leader, their overseer, and the villagers might have been paying their own special tribute. He was sent into the afterlife like a small king in his own small kingdom. He held a significant role in the village, so his journey to the afterlife would have been a major event. His funeral likely began with a grand procession to the chapel, similar to one held earlier for another notable person. The procession would have moved along the path toward the cliffs where the tomb was located. It's difficult to grasp the noise, color, and vibrancy of such ceremonies today, but ancient Egyptian funerals were full of life. That's a fitting word, life. Their goal was to bring the deceased back to life in some sense. Life itself was almost a preparation for this transition, as the funeral marked the passage from one world to the next. The dead were expected to be reborn in their tombs. It was crucial that all the tools and objects from their lives, along with items meant to help them move on, were placed in the tomb. These would work together to revive the soul and carry the person into eternity. As his body, enclosed in layers of coffins, was taken to the tomb, all his belongings would have followed. Wall scenes from similar tombs show what such a procession would have looked like. In the tomb of the governor of Thebes, a contemporary of the deceased, there's a vivid, colorful depiction of a funeral. Rows of men, servants, and bearers are shown carrying the possessions of the dead: a bed with linens, a headrest used as a pillow, painted wooden boxes containing personal items, a walking stick, and a chair similar to one found in the tomb. There were jars of perfume, flowers, food, and drink. A funeral of this scale was costly, and another expense was hiring professional mourners. These individuals were paid to make as much noise as possible to honor the deceased. The louder the mourning, the more significant the person. These mourners appear unkempt, and upon closer inspection, they are crying. They were so skilled at their role that they could force tears, causing their heavy black eyeliner to run, something anyone who wears mascara would understand. Tears are shown running down the women's faces, depicted beautifully by the ancient artist using small black dots. Once the procession reached the chapel, another grand and intricate ritual began: the opening of the mouth ceremony. This involved a 75-step sensory process designed to bring the deceased's soul back to life within the mummified body. To achieve this, all 5 senses had to be reawakened. The massive black sarcophagus had been hauled up with ropes, and the bearers carefully lifted the black and gold human-shaped coffin, placing it so that it faced the same direction as the speaker's position, suggesting the deceased was ready to journey into the next world. It was a powerful and emotional moment for the family. The figure of the deceased was once again standing upright before the tomb chapel. At that point, the eldest son stepped forward with a ceremonial tool, lightly touching the mouth of the mummy to restore speech and breath. The eyes were symbolically opened, and the ears touched so that hearing could be restored. All senses were reawakened. The ritual was also carried out on a statue of the deceased, a safeguard in case the body was ever damaged. Restoring the sense of smell was essential, so incense was offered. The ancient Egyptians often gave flowers to the dead, particularly the white and blue lotus, which are frequently shown being held to the noses of the deceased to restore the sense of smell. To bring back the sense of taste, fine foods were offered. After the ceremony ended, the funeral party moved to the tomb for the final burial, where a feast had been laid out for the deceased to enjoy in the afterlife. The display in front of the observers, bright and vivid, is the actual food discovered in the tomb. It includes staples of ancient Egyptian life: bread, onions, and garlic, common daily food items. The onions and garlic were so well preserved that when the tomb was opened, after 3,500 years, their smell was still strong. The tomb contained at least 50 loaves of bread, jars of roasted duck, fish, bowls of vegetables, fruits and spices, grapes, dates, and a unique item called dom palm nuts, which are said to taste like caramel. This food was arranged carefully as a formal banquet for the dead, allowing their spirits to enjoy the essence of these offerings. Additionally, according to the Book of the Dead, the deceased also desired to be sustained by drink in the afterlife. This is spell 148 from the Book of the Dead, which is meant to provide the soul of the deceased with all the food and drink they need in the afterlife, including a desire for things like goose, beef, and wine. The foundation of this request is the staple diet of ancient Egypt: bread and beer, common to all classes of society. The word beer appears frequently in the spell, indicated by specific hieroglyphs, including a symbol for a beer jar. The repeated mention shows a strong desire for an eternal supply of beer, symbolizing a never-ending feast. While the afterlife promised an eternal banquet, there was still labor to be done. In ancient Egypt, working the land was a duty expected of everyone, even after death. To handle this, people included small figurines called shabtis in their tombs. These figures were meant to perform all necessary tasks on behalf of the deceased in the next world, and were even equipped with miniature farming tools. The intention was to ensure a pleasant afterlife. This is reflected in the artwork found in the chapel, which shows scenes of joy and festivity. To truly understand ancient Egyptian life, it's important to engage with their sensory world, including sound. One depiction features Ians playing lively tunes, indicated by the posture of a lute player, suggesting motion and dancing. Зрение, танец и радость были центральными для древнеегипетской культуры. Modern Ians have used images from wall paintings and surviving instruments to recreate what ancient Egyptian might have sounded like. When the burial finally took place, the deceased was placed in a large black sarcophagus surrounded by their possessions covered in dust sheets. After setting everything in place and leaving the burial lamp lit, the funeral party exited the chamber, carefully erasing their footprints and sealing the wooden door. Workers then bricked up and plastered the passageway and filled the tunnel with rubble. However, the journey to the afterlife wasn't over. Regardless of wealth or preparation, every soul had to pass one final test. This was the weighing of the heart, a key moment in the journey beyond. Though the illustrated scene dates from centuries later, it portrays the same essential concept. The soul must face judgment and prove itself worthy to enter the eternal afterlife. The goddess of truth, often depicted with a feather of truth as a crown on her head, is present here. At the far end stands the ultimate judge of the dead, overseeing the event. At the center of the scene is a traditional Egyptian balance. On one side lies the heart of the deceased, being weighed against the feather of truth, which symbolizes purity, honesty, and virtue. If the person lived a righteous and innocent life, their heart would be light and sinless. However, if they had committed wrongdoings or angered the gods, their heart would be heavy with sin. A heart too heavy couldn't proceed into a blessed, eternal afterlife. Instead, it would be thrown to a terrifying creature known as the mythical creature, a fearsome combination of lion, crocodile, and hippopotamus waiting eagerly to consume it. This moment marked the final death, the second and permanent end. Unlike the earthly death, which was merely a passage to another state of being, this was the end for evil souls. However, there was a way to improve one's chances. Around the neck of the deceased hung a large amulet called a heart scarab, as seen in examples from museum collections. For the ancient Egyptians, the heart was the center of intelligence and emotion. In the afterlife, when standing before the gods to account for their life's actions, the heart could betray its owner by speaking out. The heart scarab served to silence it, invoking a spell, urging the heart to stay quiet and not testify falsely. It appears that this individual did everything possible to secure an ideal afterlife, from acquiring lavish golden coffins and a secret underground tomb, to an ornate memorial chapel and a detailed Book of the Dead. The most extensive section of this book, 200 lines, is dedicated to transformation spells, detailing the many forms the soul wished to take in the next world. Many of these forms were birds expressing a desire to ascend, join the gods, and soar across the heavens as a phoenix, heron, or golden sparrowhawk. Alongside all the remarkable things he could choose to become, what he truly wished for was simply to sit with his beloved wife in a garden inside a summer house, emerging into the light, playing Senet, alive in spirit and presence. For us in the modern Western world, it's easy to view these elaborate preparations for the afterlife as meaningless. Death is final, and that's the end. And yet, after encountering this couple and stepping into their world, it feels as though they have achieved a kind of immortality. Over 3,000 years later, we are still speaking about them. The ancient Egyptians believed that to say the name of the dead was to bring them back to life, and in that sense they truly live on.